that process for us to locate the necessary services that we needed for our seniors. We're over there, and so we're hosting them during the daytime to ensure that they have some activities over there and they can have some proactive things around. And then, of course, we had Career Day at Tuskegee Airmen's Global Academy, and then the adventure backpacks that we've received to give out to some of our kids that are experiencing homelessness and unsheltered youth throughout the city. So we're able to give them some nice initiatives and to keep them focused and not getting caught up with what's happening in the world as far as getting involved with crime. Another good thing, and I know that there was a question that went on earlier during our first presentation about the At Promise Centers and the number of individuals Councilwoman Norwood is going through there. So currently right now they have an enrollment of about just that 700, just under 700 individuals. I think the specific number was 695 people collectively that all three At Promise Centers are actually serving throughout each month. So they are certainly out there. We're taking people to their At Promise Centers as much as we can. We've partnered with Atlanta Public Schools who have that direct connect. So when they see things as well, they've been trained. They know everything about what's happening, and we're all able to move those resources over to the At Promise Center to ensure that we're able to serve our kids and do all that we can collectively, not just for the kids, but for the family as well, where we're able to get wraparound services for them. Then we look here, Connect Atlanta. Again, it's been just a great program. I can remember when this number was just a couple thousand, so now here we are. We're looking at the numbers. We're looking at nearly 33,000 combined. We're looking at 16,868 registered cameras, and then as we talk about integrated cameras, 16,131. Those numbers are amazing, and so we continue to work every week to try to increase those numbers, particularly in the areas where we see the most activity, where we can get some gains as far as deploying technology, taking the pull off of physical human resources so that we can, through a technology standpoint, see what's happening and be able to then divert and push our resources where they are needed. And when we see things that are when we see things where we can identify specific nefarious activities going on, we can dispatch them at that particular point in time. But it's huge, and so we're thankful for you all helping us push that project through. We've been having a number of meetings even with our retail associations as well, trying to get them on board so that we'll have an even greater amount. Atlanta Police Department's missing children. So last week we had 3 individuals that were missing. And so immediately we went into a response mode and got out there and started beating the ground, looking, putting our drones, our air unit, and a number of entities up so that we could identify those 3 kids. We were able to work closely with Atlanta Public Schools, utilizing again our FUSIS real-time crime tracking center. We were able through one of those cameras to identify 3 kids and to identify another person that, working with Atlanta Public Schools Police, we were able to identify who that person was, and that gave us the necessary information to go back to that child and find out where the other 3 that were missing were. Eventually, through one of the hard work of one of our officers, he was able to get over to a location, do a knock and talk, get inside that home and locate the 3 kids, had an investigation with the parent or that guardian that was in that house to find out what was happening and why they were allowing that child to be up in there. So there was an investigation and there were some arrests made as a result of that. But that goes back to show you how important it is for us to have that network of cameras out there so that we can save our elderly when they're missing. We can save our children, whether they be missing or run away. We're able to solve crimes and do a number of things through our network of cameras. So we were certainly glad to get the resources that needed to be given to this case through DFAC's recommendations and a number of other things. So great success from that situation. And with that concludes my presentation, and I'll be open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, colleagues. If you have questions or comments for Deputy Chief Peak, please indicate with your speaker button. I usually defer to my colleagues, but I have some pressing questions to ask. On the slide with the detail on the Kia and Hyundai thefts, the over 1,100% increase, I've been having this conversation for almost 5 months now. A number of governments, whether municipal governments, I think even some state governments, have filed cases against those manufacturers for their defects
Yes, sir.
in their products. As early as February 3rd, myself and Ms. Robinson requested data from APD to do the work in calculating the cost to the city, direct and indirect costs. You know, the time that those many calls clog up our 911 center, the time that officer goes out to investigate, the paperwork time, time to store evidence, investigative time, any time in court against people that are taken to justice because they've committed these thefts. And so I have asked now for almost 5 months, me and Ms. Robinson have asked for those monetization details from APD, from your administrative side, and we haven't gotten that. You know, our city, APD, our citizens deserve to get their piece of the pie too, just like other jurisdictions have filed suit against those companies. And yes, I know they have a plant in Georgia. I don't care. You know, we're going to do our work in getting our money back from the defects that these companies knew and know are issues, yet they refuse to fix them. And so I want Atlanta to file suit against those companies just as many other jurisdictions have done. So can we please get a follow-up and get a response from the multiple emails myself and or Ms. Robinson have sent about getting that data?
I will, yes, sir. I will follow up and find out the status and where that data is. The request has been made.
Because I mean,
And I'll follow up with
now that's mostly a job for law to work on this lawsuit, but they have to have that data to monetize how much it has cost the city. I'm sure it's a whole lot because some of these lawsuits, I know at least one or two have already reached settlement agreements of hundreds of millions of dollars. So if you could get that data, it would be greatly appreciated.
Understood, yes, sir.
The other issue is, and this is somewhat of an APD discussion, but probably more of a discussion in my committee tomorrow, City Utilities, in that getting more and more complaints about vehicle availability because they're tied up in fleet services and DPW, or they're at outside vendors, dealerships, getting repaired. I mean, the last report I got, that was last day of May, 5/31, states that a third, or 33% of just FOD's vehicles are unavailable because of service issues. So who is coordinating that with APD or DPW and trying to get those vehicles pushed out?
Right, so that falls within the Chief Administrative Officer, Peter Raymond, and Marshall Freeman, and so we had a conversation just this morning about this very issue, working closely, trying to look and ensure that we first and foremost coordinate. There's a meeting that's already scheduled with Commissioner to go back and look at how we're able to, first and foremost, when we know that there are specific parts that's needed for vehicles, how we're able to get them perhaps in storage so that when the vehicle is shopped, we don't have to wait for the part to come in. That's one of the initiatives that we're trying to look at, trying to do, as well as going back and ensuring that we are utilizing all of the vendors that we can utilize for the specific things. I know there's a challenge with parts coming in and there being somewhat of a delay of those getting in, but to the extent that we can reach out to some of the other vendors and ensure that they're able to get the parts that we need and to return those vehicles to service as soon as possible, certainly is being discussed this week to try to get those numbers down. I think the goal, the threshold that they look at is 80% of the vehicles being in service, so to speak. That's their threshold, and get it. The question becomes whether or not we need to look at that number moving forward or not, but that's part of the discussion as well, to try to decrease those numbers.
And like I said, I'll bring this up with DPW tomorrow, but a more APD sided issue is, even if all of these vehicles were available, you know, we have 6 zones across the city, in FOD. Of course, we have the airport as well. 6 zones across the city, I think 78 beats, and ideally bolded and underlined and italicized, because we don't live in an ideal world. Those zones and beats are supposed to be split fairly equitably, because when they do that analysis, they look at calls for service, they look at Part 1 crimes, etc. But going back to, even if all of those vehicles were available, we have some zones that have as little as 28 vehicles assigned to them. Yet we have other zones that have vehicles in the 40s, even up to 50 vehicles assigned to them. So why do we see that, and is there a reason for that?
So there are, and so I'll start with downtown footprint, because there's generally more officers assigned to downtown, and there are a number of different events and different units within it. So usually their vehicle numbers are higher than the rest of the other 5 zones. What we try to do is, when we see a disparity in those particular numbers, that if need be, then we adjust some of those resources out. Also going back and looking, trying to ensure that the data that we have as far as those vehicles and what those levels are is actually accurate, so that we're not looking at a number and thinking one thing, but it's something else, to where either those vehicles, they'll say that the zone has 30 vehicles, but if 15 of them in the shop, they don't have 30 vehicles, and particularly how long that vehicle has been in the shop. So it's certainly something that we have to look at, but we have to look under the surface to ensure that we're getting the raw data that we need when we look at starting to shift those vehicles. There are, through some of the vendors that we've brought on to try to outfit the vehicles that we've been recently purchasing, I think the goal is that we'll be pushing out about 6 vehicles a week. We've deployed all 40 of the first set of take-home vehicles, and so now we're starting to push out vehicles in each zone, so that we can just get FOD back to where it needs to be, and then we will still at the very same time push out the additional take-home vehicles that we need throughout the FOD to be successful with deploying vehicles. So it's something that we are looking at daily, to be honest with you, ensuring that once they're fixed, that we get the people over to get those and get them back in service. But at the same point, depending on how long it's been out of service, how many vehicles do we have now that are needing services? I pick up 2, but now I got 3 that I need to put in the shop to ensure that we keep it on the road as long as possible. So it's a balancing act, but we're certainly watching that closely.
So that's a conversation we'll continue to have, both with DPW and APD, because I'd like to dig down a little deeper and understand that more, as far as some of the vast differences in both assigned and available vehicles in different zones. Just looking at the available vehicles, there's Zone 1 has 18, Zone 3 has 16, and we have other zones that have almost double that, or more than double that, and much larger crime suppression unit numbers. So again, ideally, zones are supposed to be, co-equal. When it looks at the calls for service and crime, Part 1 crimes, and things like that. So look forward to hearing more about that. And I will say, the missing children slide you showed, that was in my district, and glad that camera came into play, because I actually placed that camera. I was tasked with rolling out District 9's camera program back when I worked for my predecessor as a council aide, and that camera has also solved a murder a few years ago, and now it has helped locate, or at least assist in locating, some missing children. So much to your point, those cameras and our camera network is very important when it comes to both hopefully preventing crime, but when it does occur, solving crime and these missing children, and as you mentioned, elderly missing persons cases. So
absolutely. Thank you for the insight. That's helping us tremendously.
Next up is Councilmember Waits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. GP, thank you for the presentation. Over the weekend, I caught that Ackworth received about $900,000 for the crime reduction grant, and I was just curious, given our population size, what amount the City of Atlanta received.
So, City of Atlanta, through the crime reduction grant, the overall, from my understanding, is $1.6 million to the city, and there's a breakdown of initiatives. I know Director Spike sent out a a press release on that as well. So I think we're looking at like about 227,000 earmarked towards gun ownership training, including the purchases of gun boxes. So looking at that, trying to lower those gun numbers down. Then, of course, there's also some monies in there for license plate readers for the network to grow that technology that we're speaking of now. And then there's just about $1.2 million for analytics software and other types of technology that we need to enhance our crime fighting initiatives within the city.
Thank you for the breakdown. I was just curious, given the challenges that we face in Atlanta, which are unique from Ackworth, and I was surprised to see that it wasn't much higher. And lastly, during the presentation from corrections, there were individuals who were detained for some items. I think these were combined, and I was just curious for our officers. I wanted to hear from you as to whether or not there are any individuals who are being detained ever for utilizing a cell phone, given the hands-free dynamic, any seatbelt violations, as well as tail lights. Are there any individuals ever arrested in the city of Atlanta for either of those three things?
For those specific issues, those specifically alone, no.
Yes.
No. Generally now, 9 times out of 10, if we were to make what we would say a physical arrest, actually taking somebody into custody, those charges would be an add-on to a number of other initiatives that would have precipitated us to take that person off the street. But no, those are just copies of charges in a normal situation.
Thank you, Chief. And the final thought is on, I think, May 8th, I asked a question to the municipal court for collaboration between APD, the courts, and solicitor's office for any policy that we could request of the state or whomever to prevent impounded vehicles that have liens with lenders from being returned to the owners who are engaged in street racing and or any illegal activity. Are we able to move that forward, or is there any information available regarding that collaboration?
So I'm not certain on it. I haven't been briefed on it, but I know historically when we looked at that, that was a situation to where I believe we did have some conversations preliminarily with law to figure out what we could do as far as whether or not through the district attorney's office as well, whether we could hold, seize, or whatever that might be for that vehicle that's involved with that activity. I could circle back around and see. I can't remember the specifics to what that resolution was, but we'll take another look at it to see if there's anything changed with that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up is Councilmember Lewis.
Hey, Chief, I appreciate you for coming in today and hearing this, especially when I see a university and I see a way to move someone from P4K playing for keeps off the street. We know that the older folks in that area are grabbing our young folks like crazy. When I'm on Instagram and I see P4K in somebody's bio, I always wonder what it meant, and I dove more into it. So to see you take these folks off the street in my district is next level, and I appreciate you for that hard work. My questions today are around the street water sellings. What do we do if let's say we come? Because I know on one side of Cleveland Avenue and University, they've stopped selling water. They're hiding in the bushes sometimes now on the other side. They're now on the south side of the streets. What do we do if we encounter a young man or a young lady selling water? What do we do?
So from the Atlanta Police Department standpoint, when we have the activity, our beat officer or whomever will go out and investigate what's happening. Usually our police athletic league will also respond in addition to that beat officer to come out to interview the youth, to find out what's happening, where they're living, to see what resources we can provide, to see if there's a need for them to be there, or are they just there because they want an opportunity to put some money in their pocket. But the goal is for us to redirect them to other programs, even if we're talking about feeding that information into the mayor's office so that we can look at whether or not that youth meets the age requirements for a job or whatever it is. We try to focus them into more positive situations so that they don't have to be out there darting into traffic. And like I said, when it gets down to the point where there are obvious violations, then, depending on the age, whether it's juvenile, we get them back to their parents and reunite them, or if they're adults, then we have to deal with it through the courts if that's our last means of trying to ensure that we keep them safe and our citizens as well.
And I appreciate you on that. I'm just trying to find better ways to slow it down, because in the city we have jobs. Any kid 14 or older makes at least $15 an hour. If you're an APS student, it's a guaranteed job for our kids. It's a one in a lifetime type of opportunity. So, and we also have, if they're under 14, we got camp. We got young people paying $2 a week to go to camp, or free to go to summer camp Best Friends in the city of Atlanta. So I want to just see it disappear in my district. So I'm just trying to find out different ways in which you think I can work with you on it. Even if you grab somebody and take them right down to 818 Pollard, or take them over to the PAL office and give them my phone number, because I think it has to stop. They're no longer selling water. The water's hot. They're panhandling. And so we got to find different ways to fix that. So I wanted to know what you do, but we don't run their, do you run their names when you grab them? How did that go?
So with juveniles, naturally, the only thing that we're doing is trying to ensure that there are not any warrants, so that if whatever the case may be on that, if it's a juvenile, we're contacting YDC just to ensure that there are no holds or anything like such. If it's an adult, then yes, we're going through GCIC to ensure that they're not wanted. To your point, the programs that are available, we're certainly sharing that information and pushing that data out there. We have had a number of programs, even internally within APD, teen academies, and whatever it is that we can do to try to bring youth off the street and give them something proactive, give them an opportunity to learn. We'll feed them. We'll do all that we can do, and then for those that have the jobs, we direct that information over as well.
And I say that because I try my best to touch everybody in my district. And so I'm seeing the trajectory of the young folks that used to sell water 3 years ago. I'm seeing like what they're doing now. And I'm watching these young folks, and I'm a little nervous for them. And so, Chief, I need as much help as I can in District 12. And even if you can, I know you say you send them to the mayor's office in District 12. Is there a way y'all can direct them to me? Because I got time.
I'd be happy to get with Major Ricker and see what he has, your information and your contact, so that we can make sure that everybody has all the necessary information to do exactly what you're asking.
I appreciate you on that, and I think the next thing is, today we're about to introduce some legislation on curfews. The city of Atlanta has always had a curfew. The enforcement of the curfew has been the issue, and so I know that you're about to, God willing, that passes today, because this is a love paper. This is a paper about we love y'all too much, and so I hope it passes today. And how do you think that would affect you all?
So the rules that are on the book, our responsibility is to enforce the laws that are on the book to the extent that we can. So we're certainly always out looking for curfew violations. Well, let me say this, let me change that to say we're not specifically out looking just to find a young person to get for a curfew, but in our normal operations, when we see those issues, then we generally will stop and do what we need to do. And sometimes there's a valid reason, and so we're able to reunite that person with the family without a citation. But when we find those egregious cases where there's no sense whatsoever why this child is out doing what they're doing, then it usually gives a trip for the kid home and a citation to the parent. So anything on the books that we can utilize in the right way with the right messaging, we always believe is a benefit.
And I say that because these murders are hitting home. They're hitting me real hard. I'm still talking to families. We're still talking to young Breasia, Zion. It's going on for far too long. So this is a love paper. The young folks out there, we don't want to see you outside after a certain time unless you're going to or home from work. This is a love paper. My goal is that the same way we're treating young people that sell water, that we grab them, make sure they shouldn't be, make sure that the juvenile portion is okay, take them home. But that second time, that's when we have to be more firm, because we guaranteed you a job at $15 per hour, and the average amount that people are making is $16.60, which is more than some people's parents are making per hour. So we have to be strong on that, and I appreciate you, Chief. And I apologize for this extra work we're about to put on you, but this is a love paper.
You understand?
Thank you.
Next, Councilmember Norwood.
Chief, I just wanted to tell you publicly again how great your guys were when we had the marathon 16-hour council meeting, and we were all down here until 5:30, almost 6 o'clock in the morning. And your guys were all here. They were great. really, really great. And it made all of us who understand this extraordinarily proud of our police department. So please convey our public appreciation to them.
Yes, ma'am, I certainly will, and I'm so thankful for you to make that comment. I know that they're listening. We encourage them to listen to council as well so that they're involved. What I'll tell you is that the Atlanta Police Department, we have some committed, outstanding officers who are always standing up trying to do the right thing in every situation, and so I'm certain that they will appreciate it, and we'll continue to push out your thanks. So thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments for Deputy Chief Peak? Councilman Ramus.
Chief Peak, how you doing? And maybe this is a conversation for the administrative person about the cars and things of that nature. Just to piggyback what my colleague was talking about, understanding that downtown has a lot of events and things of that nature. Let's not stop there. During the summertime, the usage of our parks pick up. As Zone 1 has Cook Park, Washington Park, and West Side Park, which is over in 9.
Yes.
We need cars as well. Some of the solutions could be hiring more people, City of Atlanta Motor Pool, to help fix the cars. Hopefully that's one of the things we're looking at, putting our citizens to work, but also looking at, as we look moving forward, seeing how we don't get into this situation again, because it's just not the cars, it's the computers in the cars and things that they need as well. So hopefully as we build this and fix this plane as we mid-flight, hopefully we can figure some things out. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Thank you again, Deputy Chief Peak.
Thank you all.
Colleagues, next up we have our...
Excuse me, I missed the public comment when you all started, so may I do it now? Or would you like for me to wait? The public comment section, I missed it. May I do it now, or would you like for me to wait? I have a public comment.
Before the presentations. I'll give you 3 minutes to speak, but
Okay.
not the...
It's not going to last long. Okay, Antonio Lewis, I applaud you for bringing up that situation about the boys on the street. Well, I have encountered them so much on the street, and I just literally gave them a little contribution because those kids probably need some money. But I have also encouraged them, you need to be careful being out here on the street. So I'm going to continue to do that now that you have brought that issue up, too. Now, going back to our youth, to take care of our youth, there must be a great understanding as to why youth desire to use guns. It really bothers me to my heart when I hear news reports that a 13-year-old are using a gun. I feel that as a citizen of this community and a former social worker, I feel that the mental health issues need to be looked at by our community leaders, the quality of life issues of these children, maybe considering a comprehensive program in our schools to meet the kids where they are, to talk to them about the negative focus of using guns and gun violence. And I think it would be a great idea for each city council person to set up a parental support unit in their district. Parents need help, you all. You know, parents are the ones that set the standards for our kids. They have to raise them. They have to teach values and morals. I've been a parent. I'm a grandparent. I'm still working with my 21-year-older, making sure he don't get out there with no gun violence. I'm concerned about our kids as a senior citizen. Every time I hear a gun story, and when that little girl over at Mays High School was shot, it just touched my heart so bad. So city council people, please, let's get together with the community. Primarily, we need to get with these parents and help them with their parenting. If they don't know how to parent well, then maybe we can get them some resources to help the parents. So that's what I had to say. I had to come down here and say this to y'all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to our consent agenda and resolutions. Claims for favorable and unfavorable recommendations. Is there a motion to accept all favorable claims, items 1 through 6? I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are favorable. I'll make a motion to adverse all the unfavorable claims, items 7 through 29. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are adversed. Moving on to ordinances for first reading, we have one of those, 23-0-1318. Please read that in.
An ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee to waive Section 2-783H1 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to authorize the settlement of all claims against the defendant in the case of DP plaintiff by and through her mother, Sparkle Stidwell, as next friend versus Yassine Abdullah, civil action file number 119 CV00401 MHC, United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, in the amount of $400,000.00, authorizing said amount to be paid from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the total settlement amount, and for the purposes.
Right, moving on to the regular agenda, ordinance for second reading, 23-0-1284.
An ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise contract renewal option number 3 with Image Trend Incorporated for EAS-1200427 Records Management Systems on behalf of the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department, that the term of renewal number 3 will be effective for 1 year from June 9th, 2023 to June 7th, 2024, in an amount not to exceed $271,086.75 for the purpose of providing records management systems to waive the competitive source selection requirements contained in Section 2-1192 of Article 10 of the Procurement and Real Estate Code of the Atlanta City Code of Ordinances, and for the purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 3, 23-0-1291. I understand we have a substitute. I'll make a motion to bring the substitute forward. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us. If you'll please read that in.
An ordinance by Councilmember Byron D. Amos, as substituted by the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, to amend various sections of the Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Chapter 150, Traffic and Vehicles, to increase the minimum fine for violations of residential permit parking areas, and for the purposes.
Councilmember Amos, do you want to speak to this?
Motion to approve.
I will second that. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. That is favorable, and we'll now go to the Transportation Committee as it is a dual referred item. Moving on to item number 4, 23-0-1299.
An ordinance by Councilmember Dustin Hillis authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to write off outstanding and uncollectible City Court of Atlanta fines, accounts receivable, and City Court fines, allowance for bad debt in the amount of $5,060,999.26, and for the purposes.
All right, Ms. Carr, I believe, is here from Department of Finance. If you could just summarize this for us, and then some members may have questions.
Good afternoon, Yolanda Carr, Deputy CFO. So really, this is an accounting exercise here. So what we're doing is writing off receivables that we've carried over from our old system in 11I. So really, this balance came when we closed the courts, traffic court, in 2005. And so we've carried this balance for over 15 years now. So being proactive as a part of the audit, we're going to remove that receivable off the books because it's uncollectible after 15 years when the courts have already closed.
So I'll start off with the questions, and we have at least one member signed up to speak. Why, this is all from the prior traffic court.
Right.
So why did we wait 18 years to write this off?
That's a very good point. So during our audit, of course, we have new auditors, so our threshold is a little bit different
Just
with
to
our
be
new
clear, you're
auditors.
speaking of an audit performed by the Department of Finance or your contractor, not the
Correct.
city auditors.
That is correct. Thank you so much, Chairman Hillis. So to your point, it's not our internal auditors with Ms. Noble. This is our external auditors. So this is one of many papers that you will see that will come before you to make sure that we're making sure that we're on top of items such as making sure we're reducing deficit funds, cleaning up old balances. They may seem small, not this one, but we have other ones that may be kind of small, but we wanted to be proactive, making sure that our records are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles.
That's all my questions for right now. I will defer to my colleagues. Councilmember Waits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure who the director is to, it may be the law department, but I'm concerned with respect to the actual citations. Will those be removed through the amnesty process, or do they continue to follow the individual who received the citation, or would those be done away with as well?
Good afternoon, Amber A. Robinson, City of Atlanta Department of Law. No, state law controls what happens after a citation is finalized and is counted as a conviction, and any fine that accompanies that. They are actually still associated with those individuals. This is just a separate accounting to provide for the write-off of that bad debt, but it does not clear any person convicted of this offense, nor does it absolve them of the underlying obligation to pay the fine.
So I guess my question again is, if we're going to write it off, is there a process that we can create an amnesty to allow these individuals to be made whole in terms of clearing their driving record to whatever situation they may be in, given that we have a number of individuals who are detained for these types of violations?
So I would say this. Is it possible for the court to set up an amnesty program? Yes. However, these are convictions. These are not generally what would be eligible for an amnesty. An amnesty is usually you have a ticket, you failed to appear, there has been no adjudication, and so the court can set up an amnesty under those circumstances. Here, these are fines which were issued. The person was convicted. They just failed to ever satisfy their sentence. They neglected to pay their fine as part of the sentence, so they've been found guilty.
Next up is Councilmember Amos.
A couple of questions, and one or two you may not be able to answer, and I understand that. This hopefully is not 1 year. Hopefully it's several years.
That is correct. It's over a number of years. And also, just to add to that, at any point that we need to collect or someone comes forward, we will collect that revenue.
What's the benefit of doing it now that over the last 18 years we didn't?
So when we look at our financial statements, of course, our general ledger is our book of records for the city. So just making sure that we're going through each account, making sure that we comb the accounts, because we have several funds that are out there. And so we're just really just trying to be proactive and making sure that we're just cleaning it up. Should we have done it a long time ago? Absolutely. But we just wanted to make sure that we get it done and move forward and make sure that we account for everything.
And I actually think Attorney Robinson answered the last question. I was going to ask, what are we doing as far as collecting differently now that we did not do then? But as she said, some may have decided to serve their sentence but not pay the fine, and that goes into this group. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Lewis.
I was going to send a huge kudos out to our mayor because they say, why is this just now happening 18 years later? We got a mayor who's actually looking at every single pot of money, which is why we keep seeing new projects happening, new grants coming. We got a mayor that's combing through every dollar. So I want to send a kudos out to our mayor for making sure that he's watching the dollars. And we also, Ms. Robinson, I think we passed some legislation here to get the Fulton County courts, the city courts, and all the courts to start talking to come up with a way to remove these violations. Am I correct?
I am actually not familiar with that. These are traffic violations, which are state laws. Those are, the General Assembly would be the only entity which could alter or amend or get rid of in any way these violations.
And I'm speaking of the legislation for city ordinances that my office passed to delete or remove those. I mean, try to find a way to come up with removing those off of folks' records.
That's true. Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, but these are all traffic violations. These are all state violations.
So on the city side, we've already started moving towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you.
One last question, totally unrelated to this piece of legislation, but similar circumstances. In another committee, we've had a conversation with Watershed for, seems like, over a year now about uncollected water bills. Is your department at all involved in reviewing those and getting those finally written off, or?
So with Watershed, they have their own finance department, and so they're working through that process to make sure. And so with Watershed, of course, they also have uncollectibles and a paper that will come before FEC as well. But they also
Like pocket change, but.
yes, that is correct. But yes, they are pursuing those accounts as well.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
And with that, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lewis. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is adopted, and thank you again, Ms. Carr. Item number 5, 23-0-1306.
Mr. Chair, the previous item is referred to the Finance Executive Committee.
Noted.
An ordinance by council members, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we have a substitute which changes the caption.
I'll make a motion to bring that substitute forward. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is now before us. Please read it in.
An ordinance by council members Antonio Lewis, Andrea L. Boone, Dustin Hillis, Michael Julian Bond, and Keisha Sean Waits, as substituted by the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee to enforce and promote the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 106, and miscellaneous provisions, Article 5, offenses by and against minors, Section 106-228, to add requirements for attendance at certain educational programs as a condition of any probation and for other purposes.
Member Lewis, do you wish to speak to this item?
Yes. So the change in this is we want to actually make the City of Atlanta ordinance that we've already had, enforce it. The change is we don't want to charge anyone a fine. So we remove the fine portion of it and the probation portion. I don't want to send nobody to jail or charge them. What we want to do is bring them into our programs. I want to bring you into this job with $15, $16 an hour, and then after that, if you're still out here, you got to join Black Men Bill, Black Male Initiative, Mothers Against Gun Violence, Mothers Against Gang Violence. So that's the change in it. But we want to enforce a law that's already on the books, and doing what we're dealing with, we always going to, and you. I don't want to say the names, but you got to understand we're losing kids. The little girls ain't off the limits. Little girls are no longer off the limits in the City of Atlanta. And that's the reason why it's time we enforce this change. So I'll make a motion if it's time.
Motion by Councilmember Lewis, second by Councilmember Waits. However, we do have more speakers. Councilmember Boone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask my colleagues to support this action. Our parents are looking for help. I think this is the first step enforcing this curfew.
so that they will have something to go home to talk to their kids about. Our parents do need this help. Please support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boone. Ms. Robinson, if you'll just tell us a little bit about what this ordinance does and how if it does modify our current city ordinances and what the substitute specifically did.
So
Perspective.
I would at this time, just as a point of order, ask that Ms. McMichael clarify the caption of the substitute that was read in so that I can ensure that I answer that question correctly. There were a few that were floating around.
And I'd like to speak on that. Mr. Chair, can I speak on that?
Councilmember Lewis.
And the reason why there are a few, because we were working hard on this. We didn't want to we're not just trying to do anything. We ain't trying to hurt nobody. So the language in this is so specific because I didn't want these kids to go to jail for what was already on it. We had to remove that portion. So there are a few substitutes. The latest one is the best one, which is what I tried to explain earlier, which is all of us have been talking about that.
Ms. Robinson, do you have what you need yet?
And all it does is remove the fine from it. It removes Section B, the penalty portion.
So, and I think we're working to ensure that the substitute that Councilor Lewis is referencing, which is that I did just send to Ms. McMichael and Chair Hillis. What that does is it amends Section 106-228, which contains the penalties for violations of the city's curfew ordinance. The city's curfew ordinance, of course, applies to juveniles, persons under the age or 16 and below. However, because the municipal court does not have jurisdiction over juveniles, as was discussed earlier and during the presentations today, the penalties are applicable against the parent or guardian of those juveniles. And so what Councilmember Lewis's substitute does is amends that section, the penalty section, to remove what the current penalties are, which are upon the first offense is a warning, which will remain, but upon second offense, the parent or guardian is subject to a fine of up to $1,000 and imprisonment or imprisonment in jail up to 60 days. This particular ordinance would remove those penalties from the curfew ordinance in favor of stating that you could be sentenced to a term of up to 60 days of probation upon conviction of a second offense or more than second or more offenses, and that as a special condition of that probation, the sentencing court would require the parent or guardian to take certain educational classes concerning the particular circumstances of the child being out of compliance with the curfew ordinance.
But again, to your point, our city code does not apply to children.
That's right. This would be against the parents or the guardians.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments, colleagues? Do we have a motion from Councilmember Lewis and a second from Councilmember Waits? Please prepare the vote.
Mr. Chair, we actually need a motion to reconsider the substitute, and I will read the new substitute in.
So move.
Okay. I'll make the second. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is closed.
Why does it state reconsider? I thought we were bringing a substitute forward.
We have to reconsider the substitute and re-vote on bringing the substitute forward to read in the new one.
6 yeas, 0 nays.
To ordinance by Oh, and we need a motion to bring forth a substitute.
I'll make a motion to bring forth a substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote
The
on
vote is open.
substitute.
The vote is closed.
68 0 nays. The substitute is before us.
An ordinance by council members Antonia Lewis, Andrea L. Boone, Dustin Hillis, Michael Julian Bond, and Keisha Sean Waits, as substituted by the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee to enforce and promote the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 106, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 5, Offenses by and against minors, Section 106-228, Same responsibility of parents, to remove provisions imposing a fine not to exceed $1,000 in costs or imprisonment in the city jail for not more than 60 days, to add requirements for attendance at certain educational programs as a condition of any probation and for other purposes.
All right. Is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Councilmember Lewis, second by Councilmember Waits to adopt a substitute. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. That item is favorable. Item number,
Number 6.
Councilmember Boone, did you wish to speak?
Yes, I would like to ask that our communications department, as you see, it says we want to promote this curfew. I would like to ask them to begin immediately promoting this curfew as soon as it passes full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boone. Councilmember Lewis?
And I want to make sure, Councilmember Boone, your entire area was affected by the murder of Breasia Powell. So this is for Breasia Powell, full out.
All right, moving on to item number 6, 23-0-1307.
An ordinance by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2021 CARES Act fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $30,000.00 awarded to the city pursuant to the American Rescue Plan Act, and authorizing the mayor to enter into an IGA with Invest Atlanta to support the One Safe initiative, the total of which shall be utilized by Invest Atlanta to inform businesses, visitors, and residents of the city's One Safe initiative, and to conduct targeted outreach and businesses and community groups to raise awareness of public safety activities and for the purposes.
My understanding, the administration's request to file this paper.
Yes, Mr. Chair?
I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Item will be filed. Councilmember Waits, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to request to file these
That is not on the agenda. Oh, is he talking about in held papers? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, when we get there. What item is that?
I want to do.
Okay. Well, when we get to the file for the held legislation, you can bring that up. So that item is previous items filed. Next item is item number 7, 23-R-3694.
A resolution by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet authorizing the City of Atlanta to donate a total amount not to exceed $100,000.00 to the Atlanta Victim Assistance Incorporated pursuant to Section 6-306 of the City of Atlanta's Charter to support crime victims in the City of Atlanta, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into any necessary agreements to effectuate the donation, and authorize the Chief Financial Officer or his designee to make all payments from the accounts listed herein and for the purposes.
Make a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second, please.
Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
Ayes, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 8, 23R 3703.
A resolution by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond authorizing the mayor to enter into an appropriate contract renewal number 2 with KEFI Commissary Network for FC 7098 for inmate commissary and trust fund services in an amount not to exceed $540,000.00 for 1 year for the purpose of providing labor, supplies, and materials necessary for the management of the trust fund and the management and distribution of commissary goods for the detainees in the Atlanta City Detention Center, ACDC. All contracted work shall be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed herein and for the purposes.
Make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 9, 23R 3739.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee to rescind Resolution Number 23R3443 and authorizing payment in the amount of $1,500 in settlement of the bodily injury claim of Sanchez Sutton against the City of Atlanta and for the purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 10, 11, and 12 are all settlements, so we can take those as a block. 23R 3740, 23R 3741, and 23R 3742. Please read those in.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against defendant City of Atlanta in the case of Huntsley Gray versus City of Atlanta, Roberto Miro individually, and John and Jane Doe's civil action file number 22 EV003305, pending in the State Court of Fulton County, Georgia, in the amount of $25,000.00, authorizing the settlement amount to be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the settlement amount and for purposes. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against defendant in the case of Kim Norgard versus City of Atlanta, civil action file number 22 MS 176921, pending in the Magistrate Court of Fulton County of Georgia in the amount of $7,000.00. Authorizing the settlement amount to be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the settlement amount and for the purposes. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against defendant City of Atlanta in the case of Corey Moore versus City of Atlanta and Darren Sherburne City civil action file number 120CV03380JPB, pending in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia in the amount of $299,000.00, authorizing the settlement amount to be paid to and charged from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the settlement amount and for the purposes.
All right, I'll make a motion to adopt those 3 items. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. So those 3 items are favorable. So you want to do the walk-ins before we do the three items on held?
We can. Yes.
Okay, let's handle those walk-ins first.
The first walk-in is Elms number 32858. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute Amendment Number 1 to the Intergovernmental Agreement for the Provision of Economic Development and Redevelopment Services between the City of Atlanta and the Atlanta Development Authority, Invest Atlanta, to add certain required federal law provisions for the expenditure of $30,000.00 in American Rescue Plan Act funds in support of the city's One Safe City initiative and for other purposes.
All right, colleagues, this is basically replacement for one of the items that we filed. So I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. Please vote. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Or second walk-in.
ELMS number 32859, a resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, a resolution urging City of Atlanta parents and guardians to not allow unaccompanied minors 16 years of age or younger under their guardianship to loiter, wander, stroll, or play in or upon the public streets, highways, roads, alleys, parks, playgrounds, or other public grounds, public places, public buildings, public places of amusement, eating places, vacant lots, or any place unsupervised by an adult having the lawful authority to be at such places between the hours of 9 p.m. on any day and 6 a.m. of the following day. However, on Fridays and Saturdays between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and for other purposes.
Motion approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Moving on to our held items, Councilmember Waits has requested to file item number 2022-01908.
An ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, as amended by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, to amend the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Chapter 106, Article 5, Offenses by and Against Minors, Section 106227, to modify the unlawful hours of accompanied minors 16 years of age or younger from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. on any day to the hours of 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., and modify Friday and Saturday unlawful hours of accompanied minors 16 years of age or younger from 12 a.m. midnight to 6 a.m. to the hours of 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., maintaining the current exceptions listed in Section 106-227 and for the purposes.
Motion to file. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item will be filed. Two more items. First is 23R3610, item number 26.
A resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis requesting that the Chief of Police utilize his authority and discretion to formulate and implement rules and regulations for the operations of the Department of Police and promulgate a written departmental standard operating procedure which would establish a pay adjustment for sworn members of the department during the time the member is serving in a capacity of increased qualification and responsibility as a field training officer and for the purposes.
Thank you, colleagues. This is a paper that I introduced to have the chief look at incentivizing our field training officers. Right now, the officers in APD that go out and train our officers in the academy while they're doing their street work, they are not paid for that. That is not in alignment with a number of departments, especially larger city departments in the southeast. So this simply to ask the police chief to look into establishing a program that won't be won't be legislative. It can be done administratively, just as other programs like the TFO, the Tactical Field Officer Program. So would ask that you support this and how we can have the police chief look into this. So I'll make a motion to approve. Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 27, 23R 3611.
A resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis requesting the Commissioner of Human Resources provide the application of a shift differential special pay rule for members of the Atlanta Police Department working evening watch or morning watch at a rate of an additional $1 per hour for evening watch and $1.50 per hour for morning watch and for the purposes.
Thank you. And colleagues, and similarly, this is a fairly minimal cost item to help us with retention and recruitment in APD. Again, this paper does not legislatively do anything by ordinance. It simply asks the Commissioner of Human Resources to look into establishing the shift differential, which again would be on par with a number of police departments, especially larger city police departments in the U.S. and the Southeast. So I would ask for your support on this item. I'll make a motion to approve. Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
I had a question,
Councilmember Lewis.
and my question is what's morning shift?
So in APD lingo, evening shift would be from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. roughly. Some do staggered shifts. Morning watch will be 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Gotcha.
Did I get that right? APD?
The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. With that, I believe we've completed our legislative agenda. Colleagues,
Mr. Chair.
do you have questions or comments or well wishes? Councilmember Boone?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask for condolences for the Honorable Derek Bozeman's brother that passed away, Yolanda Bozeman's brother, who so ably works at our watershed department, and Vicky Bozeman. They lost their brother in a tragic car accident, Michael Anthony Bozeman. His funeral services will be this Thursday in District 12. So please keep the Honorable Derek Bozeman, Yolanda, and Vicky and their mother in your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boone. Any other colleagues? All right. Well, by unanimous consent of members present, we are adjourned.